Welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We'll declare the meeting open. I'm going to ask Council Member Darren Holland if he'll lead us in the pledge and invocation, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Shall we pray? Lord in heaven, we come to you today with our heads bowed and our hearts humble, thanking you for all that you do. Lord, I appreciate you giving us, Josh and myself, the opportunity to continue working with such a great council. Lord, I thank you for giving us and actually giving our staff members the ability to do things, so many jobs behind the scenes that they do. Lord, I pray that our special responders make it home safe and sound with their families. And as we depart this building today, Lord, I pray that we all make it home safe and sound. In your name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, Councilman. All right. At this time, we'll canvass the election returns and declare the results of the November 7th, 2023 regular and special municipal election. Council, does everybody have their handout in front of them? So this top box, we'll look at it. Josh Stevenson, early vote totals, 1,109 votes. Election day totals, 1,240 votes, for a grand total of 2,349. Carlene Chisman received 474 early votes. Election day total is 486, for a grand total of 960 votes. Darren Holland received 741 early votes, 899 election day, and 1,640 votes total. On the reauthorization motion we had on the ballot, we received on early vote for 1,168, against 270. On election day, we received 1,323 votes, and those who voted against counted 364. On total, we received 2,491 for and 631 against. The next page, Council, you can see this is broken down by precinct and percentages. So we're going to focus on the main totals. So we'll declare Josh Stevenson the victor in District 2, Darren Holland the victor in District 4, and we'll declare Proposition A as passing. So, Linda, will you read B2 for us, please?
Resolution 7227, declaring the results of the November 7, 2023 regular and special municipal elections held in the city of Sherman, Grayson County, Texas.
Okay. Council, any questions or motion on this item?
Move to approve the results.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, at this time, I'm going to ask if Councilman Holland and Councilman Stevenson will go down to the front where our city clerk will administer your oath of office.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Josh Stevenson, solemnly swear
I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of City Council Member in the city of Sherman,
of the office of City Council Member in the city of Sherman,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
protect and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of the state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thanks. Okay, the next item is the election of deputy mayors. You know, traditionally, we've gone as far as deputy mayor selection as tenure and experience on the council. We do this by rotating when the particular councilman was elected. So at this time, the honor would fall on Councilman Teeman if he would so like to serve as deputy mayor.
I'd love to.
Okay. We have a motion to appoint Councilman
I'll make a
Teeman.
motion
Okay.
to appoint Councilman
Sean Stevens.
Sean Stevens. My mind just went blank. I apologize to the constituents for that. Sean Teeman to be deputy mayor.
Second that.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve, Sean. Okay. Do we
I
need
apologize to y'all forgetting who you are.
That's okay.
No, that's funny. Do we need to reorganize now, or do we wait?
We look a lot alike.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shimmy over. Okie dokie.
Very
Swap a
good.
seat. I'll take that. I think we pulled this swap a year ago.
I think we did. Why is your mic so much harder than mine?
It's shorter.
Oh, Josh.
All right. Thank you.
Look at Josh. He's waiting.
Okay, now we're to citizen comments. Does anybody have anything to say regarding any item on the agenda this evening?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city personnel, citizens of Sherman. My name is Josh Marr. I live in Van Alstyne. I'm just wanting to announce that I will be running for the County Commissioner Precinct 1. Jeff Whitmire is not going to run again, so there will be an open seat. I'd just like for y'all to be informed about that.
Okay.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for being here. Okay, we are now to the consent. Oh, is there anybody else before I move on from this item? Okay. We are now to the consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion without discussion unless a council member or citizens requests a specific item be discussed and voted on separately. These items include H3 through H7. Does anybody want these broken apart for any reason?
No.
Okay.
Move to approve consent.
Second?
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll open public hearing. Linda, if you'll read G1 for us, please.
Ordinance 6675, a reauthorization of a 1/8 of 1% sales and use tax passed by voters at an election held on November 7, 2023, and results declared by resolution number 2772.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Mary?
Yes, the city charter requires city council action to levy taxes. This ordinance reauthorizes the 1/8 of a percent street sales tax that was approved by the voters on November 7th and fulfills the charter requirement.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. If not, we'll close public hearing. And council, as you'll remember, we tabled ordinance 6649 at the September 18th council meeting. We need a motion and approval to remove this item from the table.
Is it a motion to remove? Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we'll consider the adoption of ordinance numbers 6675 and 6649. Council questions, discussion items?
Can we just get a brief overview of G2 again and where we were when we tabled it? Because I don't recall.
Yeah, on September 18th, this item was tabled. Council requested staff look at the smoke shop and vape shop requirements in our ordinances. Since that time, we have updated our ordinances to add a few more restrictions to the location, and distance requirements of vape shops and smoke shops from schools, other smoke shops, things like that. Since this item was tabled at the September 18th meeting, it doesn't fall under the new ordinance regulations that were adopted. But the applicants are here and they wanted to bring this back up for discussion. And I've asked them to put together a graphic showing the distance. If they were to resubmit, they would not qualify. They would not meet the requirements of the new ordinance, as they're within less than 1,000 feet of another smoke shop and vape shop. They've shown in here their distance, property line to property line, is approximately 500 feet, but door to door, it's about 928 feet. I think I'm reading that right. So they're requesting council to hear this item and to take action.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Well, in the spirit of fairness, since they made the application before we decided to examine the ordinance, and since they are so close to 1,000, I'd move to approve 6649.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Two opposed? Okay. Okay, council will discuss 6675.
Move to approve 6675.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, council. All right, we are to H1. Linda, will you read that, please?
Resolution 7228, approval of guaranteed max pricing with Byrne Construction Services as construction manager at risk for the remodel in addition to the fire station number 1.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Good afternoon, Chief. Come on up.
Council. As we presented to y'all back in the budget meeting in June, we continued with the project. We had selected Byrne as our contractor at that time, went back, and we bring to you the GMP numbers. If you remember, we had confirmed that the site of the central fire station was strategically located, taking the opportunity to participate in the revitalization of downtown. This not only is the building and the needs of the fire department, it also participates in updating the entire block, 1 block south of downtown. It increases the capabilities of the fire station, fire department in general. It's going to go from 6 bedrooms to 11, 9,000 square foot to almost 14. And it just gets another piece of the fire department ready for the future, for decades to come.
How long will it take?
With us tonight is Aaron with Hydell and Associates, our architect through the entire project. Jason and Gabe with Byrne, and 1 year is the estimated construction time. Well, they are currently doing the asbestos remediation right now at Station 1 in preparation for the construction.
So that's why the station is, I was just there this afternoon.
They'll tend it off.
I wasn't looking for you, but I was over there dropping books off.
Right.
And noticed that everything is closed up, and so I'm assuming all staff have been moved out.
Yes. Yep. So they have went, we did the, it was a trial period. It worked really well when we combined Station 1 and 2. Numbers came back really good. That was really efficient. We are benefiting by the opportunity of still having Station 2 for that crew to move back into while this remodel goes on. Affects operations a little bit, but nothing that's terribly out of the norm.
Perfect.
The 2 is Dewey?
Dewey.
Okay.
Dewey. You gonna fix that light right there?
It's not right there.
That traffic light.
At Cherry and Travis.
Is that part of the remodel?
We're working with engineering on something.
Goes into four-way stops.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Bob, did this, or Chief, did this come in at what we were expecting it to come in at with the guaranteed max price?
So this is a guaranteed max price. We are still working on some savings here and there, but we brought you our guaranteed max price. With construction being what it is today, A few of us were surprised at what it was. But when you look at the square footage it entails, and we several times during the process, myself and Aaron looked at the comps on comparing it to an all new construction, and it just kept over and over coming out that this was more bang for our dollar and a better participation in what downtown is doing.
At 7.7 million.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And we had that already budgeted. Something.
Yeah,
along those lines.
we have bonded that amount bonded.
Yeah. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? For transparency, please note I did not vote on that item. All right, Linda, if you'll read H2 for us, please.
Resolution 7229, approving the Greater Texoma Utility Authority's intention to amend number 2, guaranteed maximum pricing C, and to award the guaranteed maximum pricing D to Kiewit Water Facilities South Company for the South Wastewater Treatment Plant MVR project.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Tom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So we're progressing through the progressive GMP. The first part of this resolution is to amend the GMP number C. It was originally agreed to be $10 million, and the first package, we were pushing the limits of that. We still had quite a bit of pre-procurement materials to get, and so we're seeking to raise that number. The first equipment was the MBR equipment itself, the Veolia, at right almost $4 million for that one item. The pre-procurement for the electrical equipment was right at $3 million. And then we had disc filters, pumps, and some screens that was real close to $2 million. And so we really have pushed the limit of that $10 million original budget. And we had a pretty substantial list of stuff still to get. We had the screw conveyors, aeration blowers, sludge state storage blowers, the impeller pumps, centrifugal pumps, the concrete tank, the 4 million gallon tank, I think it is, plate screens, grit removal, mixers. So there's still a lot of stuff to get. And so we would seek to increase that to by $7 million to a total of around 15. Let's see, I had that number. $15,321,000 is where we'll be at, and we still have a little bit more to go. And so we're going to increase that. We would like to increase that just a little bit more so that we don't have to come to council and ask to amend it again. Hopefully that's our goal there. The second part of this discussion of this resolution is the award concurrent with GTUA to award the package D. The package D was for grading, excavation, support of excavation, and dewatering. We opened bids on that in the amount of $15,902,635. So that, by the time you add on the GMP fees, it comes to $19,058,592.43. So with that, if you have any questions, I will entertain any questions.
Council, any questions for Tom?
Oh, it's the big jump.
The total project will probably be $260 million, and I think we're at $83,360,000 at this point. So yeah, I'll be back up here a few more times for some more stuff. But it's progressive GMP, so we keep getting the sub packages until we get all of those, and then they issue the GMP.
Building it in parts, so we'll come back with each stage, each part.
Yeah, each of the little sub parts are kind of like little contracts. I say little contracts; they're big, but they're contracts.
We take little too.
Mm-hmm. So Tom, let me ask, just to clarify for me here, is the total package went from 7.1 to 19.5? Is that right? Or 19 million? And that was due to just procuring more, the pre-procurement process, getting more stuff done now.
The 19 is for package D.
I got you.
Yeah.
The overall cost has been within our contingency and stayed the same. You're just procuring more upfront than what you were expecting.
On the pre-procurement, correct.
Okay.
Right. We've been through quite a bit of pre-procurement. I mean, we advertise for those. A lot of the bid packages, the big ticket items, we've had pretty good competitiveness. I think on the Veolia, the MBR, we had 3 bidders. Veolia was the highest bid, but when you take into consideration the overall long-term cost, they came out cheaper. But I mean, we went through a scoring process, point system,
and they were better able to treat what's coming into the plant.
Yeah, some of the factors are like the size of it. If they're smaller, we have less concrete, and so a lot of the factors were weighed.
Quick question about one of your numbers. You'd said something about 15 million a project, and there was a $4 million fee on that $15 million. Am I missing that? That's a 26% fee of the $15 million project. I don't know if I'm mixing those numbers up or no. That's standard or
I think he's probably talking about the GMPD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
D. Okay, yeah. So the cost of work was $15,902,000 and some change, and then there's a 9% contingency, and then that brings it to $17,333,000 some change, and then there's a CMAR fee, which is $1.7 million additional, and that brings the total to $19,058,000.
Tom, if we don't use the contingency, does that come back to the city?
I have a
Yes.
representative from Kiewit here. I think it is representative of yes.
Okay.
Is that not correct, Kyle? 60/40?
Mm-hmm. 60/40.
The original contract dictates those terms.
But
Is
the
that-
contingency,
that ain't. The numbers seem significant there. I didn't know if that's standard operating procedure or that's just the way to. Okay.
So, Tom,
That's a good question.
So 60/40, is that the city gets the 40 or the 60%?
Okay. You know? So I have some representatives from
Sounds better if we get the 60.
Pate Dawson. That's Hugh. And Kiewit, Plummer. They're all sitting there at the back like good Baptists.
So Tom, C is just a timeline issue. It's just speeding up how much we're biting off at what time, right? D is a project scope of work change. We're adding things. No,
the other way around. Yeah,
Okay.
C, we're adding to it. We're amending
Okay.
it. D, we're awarding it.
I got you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
Tom,
we need to do this, because of the new factories and new homes that are coming in, correct? Our old
It's
Plant.
mostly,
was pretty well worn out.
well, it's mostly for the industrial stuff.
Okay, it's
Yes,
for
sir.
our industries. that we're
Yeah.
bringing in.
Mhm.
Tom, have you ever
Thank you.
moved this fast on a project?
No way. No one has, I don't think. Yeah, I think next month we have 4 bid packages.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're at D. Tonight will be D. We'll have done 4 so far.
Okay.
And I'll have 4 next month.
The whole project, how long do you think it's gonna take to get it completed?
It's
April 25.
thank you. Yep.
April 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Are the prices gonna change between now and then? Because I'm sure the labor and materials are gonna go up.
Well, that's one of the good reasons why we want to pre-procure. So it fixes the price. We pre-select it, and then Kiewit will issue the purchase order. So it was done competitively, and they can sole source that.
We're going to have a lot more of these, so I'll go ahead and move to approve this as written.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We'll determine
Thank
the
you, Tom.
60/40 after this, I guess.
I'll talk to you, Darren.
We're gonna move I1 until after executive session. So we'll move on to I2, receive updates on downtown Sherman initiatives. Nate, good evening, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Council, wonderful to see you all tonight. It has been 364 days since I stood up here and announced our, what we lovingly refer to as our D6 initiative, rethinking how we do incentives downtown, our policies downtown, really just kind of looking at all the different ways that we can help downtown become a better place faster. So we wanted to give you an update on what has transpired over the course of the last 364 days, as well as talk about some new plans that we have that we're pushing forward on now. So as far as policy goes, the biggest thing that we did is so much of really the D6 package in general has been trying to move us in line with our peer cities, making sure that we are being at least as generous as those who we are competing with. So part of that was changing how we do our policy on engineering and actually paying for more than we were before. So instead of taking the water and sewer service to the property line, we take it now all the way to the building, as well as cover the engineering costs of figuring out what those are going to be. So we've currently spent about $20,000 on engineering in order to make that happen on several different buildings downtown. Another thing we looked at is the fire suppression policy. We were requiring vaults in our fire suppression policy, meaning that there was basically a giant underground chamber where the kind of mechanics all came together on the fire suppression system. After talking together with our fire chief and our fire marshal, we determined that that just wasn't necessary, especially in downtown where you're working in tighter spaces and there's not always a lot of room underground to put something like that. So we changed our policy there. We scaled back parking enforcement. One of the things that we heard most from downtown businesses was that our aggressive parking enforcement was driving away potential customers. So we took that from a 5-day-a-week policy down to a few days a week, so that we are still enforcing, we're still making sure that people are following the rules, but we're not out writing tickets 8-5. And then we're exploring the idea of community dumpsters. So we've had a lot of questions from downtown business owners, especially with some of the new restaurants that are planned to be coming in, about trash. Currently, most of the blocks on downtown are served by just trash cans, just like a residential address would be. And so they have 4 or 5 or 6 of those trash cans behind their building, and they fill them up, and they're empty just like any other residence would be. What we're looking at doing, we're in the early stages right now, is moving to more of a community dumpster situation, where each block would have its designated trash spot, so that we could provide a lot more trash service and also empty those dumpsters more often than we're currently doing. We think especially once these restaurants open up, that's going to become important, so that we're not having issues with smell and that sort of thing downtown. Infrastructure. We looked at a number of different things regarding infrastructure in downtown. We did improve the lighting in the Crockett Houston parking lot ahead of some of the changes we'll talk about here in a second. We painted all the existing poles, and as a trial, we added solar lights to the back lot. We were interested in seeing how those would perform and seeing if we could use them more widely across the city. So we kind of used this as our little pilot project, and we were really, really pleased with how they perform. They perform as well or better than the lights that we currently have there. Unfortunately, the saga of the light poles has been something that has really gone on a long time, and it's not good. We had originally planned to spend $200,000 to replace the 12 light poles around the courthouse. Once we got engineering back on that project, it came in at $500,000, which we thought for 12 poles was probably a little bit too much. So our plan B, which is kind of I don't want to say temporary, it has the option to be a temporary fix to the problem. We're going to remove on-course poles and we're going to replace them. This is the plan anyway, with solar lights just like the ones that we put in the Crockett Houston lot. That will accomplish some of our goals. It'll increase the amount of light that we're actually generating downtown, which is important, especially for pedestrians. But it also takes the whole thing away from on-course. So they will be our poles that we can hang whatever we want off of them, and we can finally realize our long-term vision, which is having twinkly lights over the streets. So this might be a long-term solution. It might be something where we come back in 5 years and say we need something more than this. But this will allow us to kind of start that process of improving that square.
And the cost was?
And the cost was 1/10 of the alternative. So we thought that was a pretty good trade-off. They did some photometric studies just kind of showing you what that'll look like once those 12 poles are replaced. Just thought that was kind of cool. That's kind of what they'll look like. They'll be 25-foot poles. They'll have lights on both sides and then the solar panel on top. And the great news, if you noticed on the previous slide, is that our city crews can handle the installation themselves in-house. So that, of course, saves us a tremendous amount of money. And we can use the bases, the current bases. They can make the poles custom to fit the bases that we already have. So we think it'll be a really a good way to move that project forward. Kid Key Park, we had planned to spend $70,000 in Kid Key Park, making the fountain, the old Kid Key fountain, functional again, and then replacing the sad little planter beds in front of the auditorium. We really shelved those plans. We got the plans back on the fountain. We were ready to move forward with that, but that was really when the talk about City Hall kind of kicked into overdrive. So we said, let's take a break and make sure that what we're doing in Kid Key Park is not going to be conflicting with what we need to do for City Hall. So now that City Hall planning is kind of wrapping up, we've looked forward to moving forward with those projects again. Parking, if you'll remember what the parking lot looked like before, we had a mix of 1 hour and 3 hour parking. We had a mix of 3 hour parking and reserved parking in the front part of the lot, and the back part was just a free for all. We flipped that to do 61 3 hour and 1 hour spaces in the front lot and add 110 spaces for paid customers in the back lot. There was a little bit of grumbling about that at first, people having to walk an extra 100 feet to their car. But we think we've got that kind of ironed out at this point, and the system seems to be working pretty well. We resurfaced that entire parking lot, repaved it, relined the whole thing, and removed all of the signs. There were signs just littering that parking lot beforehand. So by taking the individual spaces away, we were able to open up a lot of space for the farmers market. The Walnut Houston lot, if you'll remember, that was a project that we partnered with Old Iron Post to open up some more parking spots downtown. There was a kerfuffle over whether or not those spaces should be timed or not. And in the end, the business owners in that area let their voices be heard, and we did go ahead and remove those time restrictions in that lot. And then I think it was Henry that asked about the lights on Travis. This is a project that the mayor brought up last year. We did a traffic study and determined that the lights on King, Cherry, and Wall can be removed pretty much right now. Wall is going to require us to do some sidewalk work there to make sure that the sight lines are appropriate. But that will remove 3 of those kind of miniature lights that people have been complaining about for many years. Long term, the parking study showed that we should also remove the lights on Pecan, and I think there's one more, isn't there? And then to take the light on Mulberry and actually upgrade that from a little light into a full stoplight up above that people can actually see. DBIG, this is my favorite slide because it really shows what we were able to accomplish by changing the rules in 1 year. If you'll remember, we had a maximum number of grants of $50,000 per year prior to changing around the funding mechanism to the TERS. We threw that out and said, basically, we will write grants as long as there's money in the TERS. And so we were able to do $259,000 worth of grants in the last year, which is the equivalent of 5 years of projects that we've essentially front-loaded and brought from stretched out over the course of years to right now being worked on today. So I'm really proud about that. I know it's really helped a number of our buildings that we have had be unoccupied and in a bad condition for a very long time. We've been able to bring those back with the help of our private sector partners. The MSRP. So this is one that we did not launch a year ago. We only launched this in August, but I wanted to give you a quick update on that. We've enrolled 33 businesses so far. That's about 80% of the total number of businesses that we think are qualified to be part of the program. So I'm really happy about that. We'll clearly want to work on the other 20% as we move forward. But as far as a couple months of work, I think that's really great. The 56,902 paid to date. Paid is a loose term there. That includes all of the businesses that have gotten us their paperwork as far as so that we can determine what the grant actually is. But some of those businesses have not turned in their 380 agreements yet, so we haven't sent all those checks out yet. But that is the amount that we have committed to. And then based on our initial projections of how many businesses there were and how much taxes they paid, we think there's probably still about another $20,000 out there that we hope to send out by the end of the year if we can get people to turn in their paperwork, which has been hands down the most difficult part of this. You would think people would be happy to send us paperwork when it's free money, but that's not always the case.
Nate, do you have any names? We don't need to mention any names.
And the second round of checks will go out in February, so people are getting their checks right now for 2022, and then the 2023 checks will go out in just a few months. The fire suppression grant is something we wanted to talk. This is something new that has been brought to our attention that other cities around us are offering that the city of Sherman is not currently offering. We are proposing to launch a grant program specifically for fire suppression systems in downtown, as we saw with the Kelly Square fire. These buildings that are built on top of each other with shared walls. If one catches on fire, a lot of them can catch on fire. So we think this is a good project, not only to save our building stock downtown, but really, again, just to put us in line with what other cities are doing. These would be smaller grants typically than the DBIG grants, but they would be stackable. So that's something that we kind of wanted a yes, no, maybe type of discussion from you guys tonight. If you think that that's something that you could support, we would bring back an ordinance. And then other possibilities, this is something that's really come to the forefront just in the past couple weeks. There are a number of properties downtown, not really a number, there are a handful of properties downtown where the projects that are going to be required to get those buildings built or rebuilt are far in excess of what would be helpful, or what $50,000 could be helpful for. So we are looking currently at other ways that we might be able to incentivize those buildings. I put kind of the three that we've batted around at this point, but there could be others that if we feel like a project is worthy or important enough that we could come back to council and say, look, we really think the city ought to have more participation on this. So we wanted to kind of tease that as what might be coming forward. The corridor study, we're almost done here. This is something that we are looking at. We have not greenlit. We have not paid any money for at this point. But we really want to focus on our four main ways into the city, that being Lamar, Houston, and Crockett and Travis. Thinking about partnering with a landscape architect to kind of design a consistent look and feel for each of those blocks on those streets heading into downtown, so that it really has a consistent feel that, hey, I'm heading into downtown Sherman right now. So that is not something we're asking for any input on today. Just wanted you to be aware that it's something that we're looking at. And that's everything I had for you guys, unless you had any questions or wanted to discuss the fire suppression grant further.
I do want to ask if there's an appetite amongst the council to consider projects on a case-by-case basis that would be very large in scale, maybe millions on projects. We could bring back to you. I don't have any numbers for you tonight, but as Nate said, $50,000 is a lot of money. $50,000 on a $5 million project is not, percentage-wise, isn't may or may not be enough to move the needle. So, is there an appetite on a case-by-case basis for staff to bring you back potential projects that we could participate in that would be significant to downtown?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'll comment on the fire suppression too, since you're asking. I know we've spent a lot of time and effort and money to try to get water to these facilities to make fire suppression even possible. And given our recent history in Sherman and Denison, I think if there's any way that we can help provide the fire suppression in our downtown, we got to jump all over it. So
I do want to point out that as part of that change in policy of being more generous with what the city is willing to pay for, utility-wise, a lot of that work has gone directly into figuring out how to get fire suppression to some of these locations.
I know we had talked about the lights around the court, around the square. and the inflated cost right there. Is there a way we can get the county to kind of help us out with that on that? Continue to get that
You
moving?
got a
Is
good
that
contact there, let me know.
Got a new contact. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, it would be fantastic if that would be something that they would be interested in, but
I mean, I think they'll benefit from it as well.
I don't think that we've had those conversations at this point, but that might be something we should ask.
Okay.
So with the solar lights, how are they performing so far?
We've been really, really happy with the ones that we installed in the Houston Crockett lot. We had concerns as to whether they'd be bright enough, first of all, and whether they would be able to perform consistently regardless of the weather. And we've been pleased on both of those counts. They've been a major upgrade over the wired lights that we had there previously. And since the cost is really considerably lower than any other solution, we'll probably be seeing a lot more of those in parks and parking lots around the city.
And those stay on all night. They make it till morning.
Yeah, so you can program the lights to go on and off on whatever hours that you choose. But yeah, we haven't had any problems with them running out of juice.
Yeah, because with the temp, oh, go. You go
Put a
ahead.
sensor on them. The sensor determines how long they stay on. I have a question on, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mrs.
No, but I was kind of the same thing, and that is, now that we're getting dark earlier, it would be nice if you could program them to come on earlier. But then, will it have enough energy to go all night?
Yeah, so
Be as dark
they
as it is.
specifically designed the light systems, the combination of the output, how much energy they're using, the size of the battery, and then the solar panel itself. They kind of take all three of those factors into consideration depending on the location to be able to provide a product that is consistent.
Yeah, I know at TML, there are a lot of people that are showing it, at the city council convention, but I didn't really look into how long the lights would stay on, but it's dark now.
Yeah, they design them for your region and your weather patterns and custom make the batteries to match the location that they're installed in. So, and we are able to program them and actually maybe even dim them, I think. So
yeah, you can program not only the hours they're on, but how bright they are at certain hours. So for instance, you might be really bright until 2 a.m. and then dim the brightness as the night goes on and you don't need as much light.
All right.
Where are we at as far as the grease traps for like potential new restaurants coming into downtown?
Grease traps are eligible for 2-to-1 grants through the DBIG program. I don't know that we have had any requests for that specifically for grease traps. As you know, it's kind of a long-standing problem downtown, really in everyone's downtown. The biggest thing there is we did change our policy regarding what we require of new restaurants. We probably did that 18 months ago, 2 years ago maybe. And I've heard a lot less anecdotal, but I've heard a lot fewer complaints since we did that than we were hearing before. But it will continue to be a problem. There's just no way to get around it.
Awesome. Good job, Nate.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay. We're to IA3, staff to review tree ordinance presented by half from the developers workshop. Rob?
Evening, Mayor, Council. Going to provide you with an update on the status of our tree ordinance, draft tree ordinance that the staff's been working on. We have the slides.
There you go.
All right. So last week we met with a group of developers on Wednesday and reviewed the draft recommendations for the tree ordinance. If you go to the next slide, Trevor, one more. In August, council directed us to start looking at the tree ordinance. We contracted with Half Associates, who is our planning on-call consultant, to assist in developing it. They were able to quickly turn around and get to the next steps, which was to host a developer workshop on September 8th. That same night, we had a public open house held in these chambers to get feedback from the public on potential tree ordinance changes. And we had a special called meeting with council on September 9th to discuss that feedback. After that meeting, we provided the developers and the city council a summary of what we heard and responses from council on the direction to go. And HAF Associates provided us with a staff review, or with a draft tree ordinance on October 31st. We've reviewed that, and we have some comments, and we had this PowerPoint that I'll go over. Oh, thank you. Go over the PowerPoint that we shared with them. This is the tree ordinance summary that was provided to the council and also to the developer group following the work sessions that occurred in September. Our consultant also looked at 6 peer cities and what their tree ordinances consisted of. Each of them were, and as Jordan Maddox with HAF Associates described in September, every city is different in their tree ordinances and how they regulate it. And this is the same for these peer cities. What's really important to note is what their preservation requirement of trees, 7 inches, 6 inches, 12 inches for Marble Falls, 6. They all kind of fluctuate between those sizes of tree preservation. So applicability of the draft tree ordinance, where does it apply to? It applies for everywhere in the city limits and also the ETJ. The developers asked on Wednesday, is it common that ETJ is included in tree ordinances? And their response in our discussion was yes. Most cities include the ETJ in their tree ordinances. Our recommendation, staff's recommendation, HAF's recommendation for protected tree is any species that's 12 inches, any tree species that's identified of 12 caliper inches or larger would be identified as a protected tree. But there would be exemptions. Any subdivisions that are 5 acres or less would be exempt from the requirements. Trees that are dead, diseased, or determined to be a safety hazard would be exempt. And any public streets, utility easements, or required fire lanes would be exempt from mitigation. Another developer comment was building pads was requested to be included on that. One of the concerns that we have with that is if you add building pads as well, then there gets to be the point where at what point is this tree ordinance really saving trees, and is it just covering everything, all of the development? So a tree survey as part of this draft ordinance would be required to be submitted as part of the preliminary plat. The required tree survey, as I mentioned, would be 12 caliper inches, but the ordinance recommends a survey size of 8 caliper inches or larger so that those smaller trees, 8 inches to 12 inches, could be included in mitigation. Currently in our current tree ordinance that we do have one. There are 56 different species that are listed as qualified trees for new residential, commercial development. The updated species list would be just 19 shade trees and 15 ornamental trees. So we're taking from a large group of trees, including Bradford pears and crepe myrtles, down to a very focused list of 19 shade trees. And these are trees that are identified to be native and survive well in our environment here in North Texas and in Sherman. And this is the list of these trees that would be approved as part of this draft ordinance. Just some sizing comparisons. There's 3 different types of trees. Obviously 8 inches I mentioned. 12 inches would be protected tree and greater. And a heritage tree would be a tree that's 36 inches in diameter or larger. And that will come up in a couple slides of why that's important, the difference between those. Survey alternatives. We discussed this with the developers in quite a bit of detail. What would qualify for a developer not to need a tree survey? So the first way that could be done is by having a certified arborist or landscape architect determine that there are no trees on that site, no protected trees on that site. The example that we've just discussed internally, if all of the property is covered in cedars that are not a protected tree, an arborist or a landscape architect could provide a signed letter that states that there are no protected trees on the site. They wouldn't need a survey. The other option in the draft ordinance is that if 25% of the site is not touched in floodplains and riparian areas, or street buffer areas or trail corridors, that 25% would allow for the developer not to have to do a tree survey because those areas would be protected. Here's examples of different areas: floodplains, riparian areas, street buffer areas, and parks and amenities. So replacement. The proposed ordinance does not prohibit clear cutting. It incentivizes preserving trees, but it doesn't require the developer to preserve trees. What that means is that if there are 12 to 24 inch trees, that they would be required to, and if they cut those down, they would need to replace 1 inch for every 2 inches removed. If it's 24 to 36 inch trees, they would have to do a 1-to-1 replacement. So you have, I'll go through an example later. And 36 inches or greater, those are those heritage trees that you would need to replace 2 inches for every 1 inch removed. So that's the incentive, is that we want the developers to preserve trees where they can, and the larger the tree, the more heritage the tree, the more consequence there would be for removing those trees. They can still remove them. If trees are preserved from 8 inches to above 36 inches, these would be the credits that would be provided for those trees to be removed, to be preserved. So the math would be, or the calculation of that, if your site has 10 12-inch trees, 120 inches in total, and you removed 8 trees, 96 inches, and preserved two trees, then you would need to replace 96 inches with 48 inches of new trees, because that's the 1 to 2, which would be 16 trees. But because you preserved 2 trees, that the mitigation of 6 trees or 3-inch trees or 18 inches. So they would only be required to replace 10 3-inch trees. The question came up is, who's going to do all this math? That was a legitimate question. And the answer is we would have to have either a third-party reviewer or their landscape architect would provide those calculations for us, as we see in other site plan requirements. Question came up is, what if they can't provide all those trees on there? Well, there's an option to do a fee in lieu. Currently, we have it in the ordinance. It would be $225 per caliper inch. There was a comment by the developer group that if you don't make that punitive enough, that a developer will just want to write a check to not have to do any tree mitigation at all, which isn't really the goal of this exercise. So we need to balance that number, that fee of what it would cost to replace those. And those fee in lieu trees could be placed in other places around the city as determined by the city manager in working with the developer. And that includes on the second one, off-site mitigation. We spent a lot, so there's 2 parts of the ordinance. There's one that's a subdivision ordinance, which involves tree mitigation, tree preservation. The other part is landscaping. What do they have to plant? What do developments have to plant to comply with the ordinance? Currently, our ordinance requirements, and we've gone over this before, a residential lot requires 2 2-inch trees. This draft ordinance would increase this to 2 3-inch trees instead of the 2-inch trees. And that all of the mitigation trees that were mentioned earlier would also count towards these trees as well. So we're not double counting on the trees that they have to replace with the trees that are required for each lot. Small lots, under 50-foot lots, only 1 tree in the front yard, minimum 60% landscape space in the front yard. We actually did a calculation on this because this came up. We actually would probably recommend lowering this to 40% to make the math work for how large driveways would be versus what the requirement is for parking. It's an example of each of the different zoning districts, smaller lot zoning districts, and how trees could be placed. Parking lot areas, we discussed requirements for parking and how many trees should be placed. This discussion, we actually got some good feedback. Our recommendation was a landscape island for every 12 parking spaces. One of the developers said, instead of doing that, making sure that there's a landscape island within 80 feet of every parking space. And so that allowed for more flexibility for the developers to be able to place the islands where they need it instead of a strict regimented every 12 spaces you need a landscape island. And additional regulations on how many shade trees would be required for a commercial lot. Spent a lot of time on street buffer areas. These are not a requirement to preserve, but they would be a requirement to maintain. One commercial developer said it's really hard to advertise their property and their businesses if there's a lot of landscaping. So we felt that with a lot of head nodding, that was a good change and a good comment that we would definitely address in revisions. And this is an example. You can either preserve the trees that are on a perimeter street, or you can mitigate those street areas with new plantings. And then buffer yards, compatibility buffers of 15 feet. If it's a development that's adjacent to an existing subdivision, they would be required 15-foot landscape buffer. Stormwater ponds, this is from Park Haven Phase 4. Essentially, there would be a requirement to have a 15-foot buffer between a stormwater pond and an existing lot. There was discussion with the developers, is this too large of an area? Should it be smaller, more like 5 feet? And then there was a discussion, how big of an area can you get to be able to plant trees in? And so the sweet spot's probably closer to 10 feet. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And staff's looking for some direction to move forward. We're hoping to bring subdivision ordinances back to council in December, and the landscape ordinance or zoning part in January, because we still have to go to P&Z for the zoning changes.
I'm impressed with the amount of work you've done, and it boggles my mind that all we wanted to do was save some trees, but it looks like y'all have gone above and beyond that. So we thank you very much. But I'm going to need a copy of this so that I can study it before it actually comes up for a vote. Please.
Very good. So Rob, I've got some input for you. I know I came to your meeting the other day, so I was able to, I didn't say much, but I was there. So, I know that part of the intention on some of these things is to really give incentive for people keeping the very large trees, the 36-inch and above, and then also creating negative incentive on some of the other ends of that spectrum. I don't know if maybe simplicity should win the day on that. Overcomplicating the formula, I think, is going to make that challenging for me to understand it while you're. I've listened to this thing twice, and I'm still trying to do the math in my head. And then the other thing, I'd like to consider or think about in this is, part of this is we want to maintain the trees we have. And another part of it is the landscape ordinance of aesthetics for the city of Sherman and what that looks like moving forwards. I think if this plan makes it easier to flat clear out in the ETJs when it's still farmland prior to being platted, right? We're going to see a substantial more number of developments in our ETJs. I also think we're going to still continue seeing the cleared land that we already have now developed in a way that's not going to be, it's not going to end up with big mature trees, which is kind of the vision of one of the reasons why we're doing this. And so I wonder if maybe there is another solution there to add. I don't know if it's another exemption or simplification of the process to say, hey, if you provide us a plan where you're going to put what our current ordinance now requires 30 inches per acre, if you provide us a plan that you're going to put 90 inches per acre on a development, that maybe you are able to forego some of these other challenging formulas, something along those lines. Or these big open lots that we would like to see mature trees on sooner than later. I'm just afraid what we're going to do is we're going to devalue treed land and push people to flat land and cleared land, and we're going to end up with a bunch of little neighborhoods with very small trees.
Well, yes, and to that, though, I think that we're not introducing anything here
Yeah.
that any other cities aren't doing. The people in this business know exactly what to do. Could we make it a little more punitive to remove the heritage trees? I'm seeing some head nods on the council. I think that's what you're talking about too. Yeah.
Yeah, bump up that fee in lieu. That needs to be looked at.
Yeah, we need to be careful with that.
Yeah.
So that's not the goal.
And we had talked about maybe just having a number of tree inches per acre, just as a goal to get to. You know, here's our standard, and you know, if they're doing front and backyards in every lot, front and back trees in every lot, and they think they're going to get to X number of inches, then they know how many they have to preserve, and then on the back end making it very punitive to cut down shade trees, and you sort of carrot and stick them to get to where we want to be. But if we don't just have a total trees per acre number where they have to reach, then, you know, they can, rather than doing all of this math and maybe them thinking a survey is punitive, if they have to get to X number of inches per acre, now a survey is flipped and now it's the other way. Now it's probably saving them money because they'll know the trees that they can protect to get that inches per acre. If obviously you don't want any old trees on new lots where new construction's taking place, so the pad site's completely ridiculous, and that would, in my mind, be off the table. But there is a lot of math. It is a little complex, and the more complex, the more people are going to try to game our system. So I'd rather have it smaller and more easy to understand, because then I think it becomes more bulletproof. So that would be my only notes.
So like a 10 unit subdivision would have 6 inches per lot, right? I'm trying to do easy math because I'm not an engineer, Clint. That's 60 inches, right? Am I doing the math right? So that 10 unit, 10 lot development would need 60 inches to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance, right? Draft. So, you know, and whatever the acreage of that is, we would want something a little bit higher than that, right? Because we want more trees. So to come up with some number that's per acre larger than what the minimum would be, which would be, in that case, 60 inches per 10 lots.
I think you get about 5 lots an acre in a standard.
Yeah.
But
somebody could chime in, I'm sure,
but that goes back to, I think the fear is now the most desirable land is going to be what's already not treed, and we are devaluing treed land to a point where now the only construction is going to happen on places that's already clear cut.
That's right.
And I think Sean's point is, if we're pushing the economics in that direction, we might end up with a bunch of subdivisions with no mature trees in them at all, because that's the economics of it. But if you are requiring them to have a total tree inches per acre, then that sort of deters them from just saying like, well, I'm going to go buy this old field over here and put 40 houses in there, because then they'll have to plant every single tree.
Yep. But what I'm asking is, the question is exemptions. Add an exemption for someone that brings a plan that exceeds the minimum, right?
Right.
So if the minimum is, for example, 30 inches per acre, so if they exceed that by double,
right,
for their proposed development, they don't need to do a tree survey. That seems to be what your suggestion is. Am I hearing that right?
That's kind of along the lines.
Yeah, that's it. And then just the nature of the calculation that they're doing, the bigger the tree that is existing there, then they're incentivized to save it. I'm not trying to rewrite everything that we're doing here. I like a lot of what's going on, but I think there needs to be a simplification, because it does sort of meander through a lot, and it gets hard to keep, right. Everyone up here is smarter than me, so maybe they can get it, but
well, again, these folks doing these developments understand what tree surveys are and do them on a regular basis. So we're not asking them to reinvent the wheel for the city of Sherman. But if we want to consider, I don't want to see folks building, unsuitable things in our ETJ either. So maybe there's a way to handle that in the wording of the ordinance, and we'll leave that to you guys. But you've heard the concerns.
And I just had one more thing. We had said that if they had 10% that they were going to leave raw, right, untouched. 25. What would prevent them from saying, "Here's our 25%, we're not going to touch," and then they get all their permits and they build everything, and then 3 years later they just go and sell that 25%.
That would most likely need to be platted as an HOA lot, a preserved lot, or dedicated to the city. In some cases, we've seen.
Yeah, because I was thinking that dedicating back to the city would probably go hand in hand with our trails program anyway.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
that would be a good tool.
That'd be a good deal.
Hey, Rob, let me ask this just from a process standpoint. So these, what the work that you and HAF has done is kind of create this structure for this. And there's two pieces, as you said. One that has to run through P&Z, and the other is really the council's domain. Are there provisions in the ordinance, or are there provisions in law that would allow for a developer, if they have a unique whatever situation, not a one size fits all, for there to be a mechanism where they come to either P&Z or the council for a variance or for an exception? Like, hey, my case is different, and so let me give you an example. So I live on some acreage. Right now, I haven't done a tree survey other than walking around my land. My guess is there might be 5 trees on my 7 acres, heavily wooded, that are protected trees, or I'm calling them protected. What's the terminology?
Trees, yeah.
Okay.
Over 12 inches and of one of those.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are hackberry and bodark, and just, they're great for shade, but they're not shade trees. Okay, so on my particular land, if I were wanting to develop this, nearly everything, 95+% could probably be wiped out, and it still be within the ordinance. A mile west, a guy has mature pecan trees and red oaks and others that are so dense that literally you could never replace, even at a 2-to-1 or 1-to-2, however you want. That might make his or her land nearly literally undevelopable compared to mine. So I'm just wondering, from a process standpoint, is there a mechanism that a developer, property owner can come back and say, hey, listen, the ordinance is making this land that I have literally undevelopable, or it's going to cost $6 million. I'm just making up numbers, a whole lot of money to make it untenable. So then by our ordinance, we've actually created a situation where we've devalued their, it's great to drive by and look at, or to walk through, or to, deer hunt. You
can't develop it.
But from a development standpoint, may not ever be able to be developed. And in fact, as time goes on, it just gets worse because the acorns fall, or the pecans fall, and they plant new trees. So will there be a mechanism where somebody can come through the council or P&Z and plead their case for consideration for things like that?
Yeah, we have draft language in there currently. We haven't done a deep dive with Ryan, with legal, on the exact wording for that, but I think that would be appropriate. I think my opinion, personal opinion, would be council's the best organization to approve those variances.
Yeah.
Probably not planning and zoning or board of adjustment, but that would be just my own thoughts.
And my input on that is, I'll do whatever you guys ask me, but I'd prefer something of that magnitude not be left to the discretion of the city manager on a case-by-case basis. If you want to delegate, that's fine, but I'm just saying something that kind of monumental or important probably needs to come to the entire council for them to hear it. And so, I mean, any thoughts on that concept?
No, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on here? Okay. We are to council comments. Henry, I'm going to start with you tonight.
I have none.
Okay.
No comments.
I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Hope everyone gets to spend time with family, maybe turns off the technology a little bit and have a good conversation with your family. But I do want to say one thing about tonight and the vote that was made earlier. I just think the council, all of us need to look at what do we want our city to look like. And we're voting on some things coming in that we really need to listen to our citizens and what the people are telling you in your ear about particular businesses and things that are coming in. So think about what's in our city's best interest. When we pass something to put in on a major intersection of 82 and 75, is that exactly what we want at a key intersection? We need to be thinking about that. Whether or not it fits the plan or not, we still have, tonight, we could have made that adjustment or made that change. So we just, in my opinion, we need to be thinking about what's in the city's best interest with some of these topics going forward. And, you know, I've had 0 positive comments on a smoke vape shop, and I've had a lot of negative ones. So I said no because that's what the citizens are telling me.
That's great. I just want to say the pink trash can is going really, really well. I think it's the citizens and us working as a council and a city to work along with the organization is going really, really well. Women's Rock, they love it. I think we're on a move again to be able to cut those guys another check and help some folks out.
And I want to compliment the city and our Parks and Rec Department and Assistant City Manager Steele on working to get us a minor league baseball team here. We had the ribbon cutting this week, and it was wonderfully well attended and everything. And the pictures that we saw were exciting, and they're excited. And we're going to be a big city at the rate we're going, just like this. You know, we're going to have our own baseball team. So it's really exciting, and I hope that you all will look forward to it. They're going to start playing in May here in Sherman. So
all the credit should go to Teresa.
Parks and Rec right there.
Along with soccer as well. So
soccer's another year away, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just like to congratulate Josh and Darren, and it looks like we're stuck with you guys for another 3 years. And I saw Josh's family here tonight, and I would just say the 2 Stevensons won an election this year.
That's correct.
Josh and his daughter Gracie, both. She won student council.
Also unopposed.
So, unopposed.
That's the best way to I don't have any comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, we just have a few announcements here. Our big Christmas tree is ready to be lit in front of the courthouse. Join us on November 30th at 5 p.m. to help us kick off the Christmas season. It's going to be a fun time together as a community. Be sure and come out for that. Be sure and mark your calendars for Coffee with the Mayor on December 1st. We'll be at Central Christian Church for our final coffee of 2023, and we'll be hosting the Sherman High School Jazz Band. So y'all come out for that. Then on December 2nd, we'll have our annual Christmas parade and Snowflake Festival in downtown. We have more than 100 floats signed up for the parade this year, so we're really excited about it. Make sure you bring your whole family down when the parade starts at 6 p.m. Then also on the 2nd, Friends of the Sherman Public Library will be holding their semi-annual book sale across the street from MLK Park. It's a great chance to beef up your library while supporting a great cause. All right, and I do want to wish everybody just the happiest and warmest Thanksgiving season. You and your family, I hope you get to take some time off and enjoy that time together. All right, the city council will now hold a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, section 551.071, to receive legal advice regarding Senate Bill 2038 and petitions for release of extraterritorial jurisdiction, and at section 551.074 to deliberate appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission alternate members, and Sherman Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. So at 6:15, we'll go into executive session. Thank you.